to call the Fair Commission meeting to order.
Okay.
Take roll call. Rosemary Bosch.
Here.
Ken Sweeney. John Trudeau.
Here.
David Linder.
Here.
Wayne Husted.
Here.
Dharma Hammond. Absent. Lori Domso.
Here.
Alderman Craig. Alderwoman Eichman.
Here.
And City Clerk Shirley, Maggie Poplar, and Angela Byer.
Here.
Okay. We will have a citizen comment period. Any citizen that would like to make a comment, please come forward now. No? Okay, citizen comments closed.
I'd just like to ask, Madam Chair, if we can speak on some of the items as they come up.
We don't have a chair yet.
Don't
We
have
have to
to.
elect a chair.
Gotta wait.
Okay, we'll play along.
Okay. We need an election for a chair. Would anyone like to make any recommendations?
Ekman, Lindsey Bash.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay,
Congratulations.
I will pass the torch to you,
We got the chair.
and then you can do the vice chair. Okay? Go.
All right, and then election for vice chair, any recommendations? I recommend Ken Sweeney since he's not here.
Yeah. That's what I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ken Sweeney it is.
Let him know.
Oh, boy. All right, on to discussion and possibility action, budget, efficiency, and expenses. Who has that?
If you look in your packet, the second page is the budget. We have invited Danielle Brown, who is our treasurer.
Finance and budget.
Oh, finance and treasurer, yes. And our administrator, Kelly Hirsch. They want to talk about a little bit about the budget and how it's been running over each year. So,
Floor is yours, ladies.
So I will just say that this is my first time at this meeting. Thank you for having me. Primarily, I'm just here to listen and provide support as needed. I guess, if there's questions that maybe you have that we can answer or attempt to answer. Just kind of looking for ways to explore how we can keep the expense down or increase the revenue to kind of make it less of an expense for the city, if there's ways to do that or not. But mainly to listen.
So, I'm Danielle. I echo what Kelly says. There's been concern from my point of view over the last, we can say since the fair started, that we pretty much have been running a deficit every year. Now, we know that the fair is not meant to be profitable and bring the city tons of money, but looking at the expense detail, we've come up with maybe some ways that we can cut down the expenses and hope to either help provide recommendations on increasing the revenue side, maybe offering more amenities for the fair. It's stuff that we can do to try and generate more revenue as well as limit the expenses that the city is providing for the fair, seeing as we have contributed as a city $13,000, I believe, or $11,000 over the last many years, and this last year we contributed $41,000 to try and offset some of that, yet we were still running a $4,000 deficit. So just again to provide recommendations and hear what you guys have to say on how the fair is going to run this year.
Out of the $41,000, what is that mainly persisting of, like police, fire, on
so
call?
It seems that personnel services has dramatically increased for both civic celebrations and St. Martin's Fair over the last 10 years, and so that's why I actually didn't put it in here, but I can provide it next time, like a 10-year overview of the expenses, and you'll see that personnel services has almost doubled.
Because I
So
do
would say
remember.
that is primarily what that.
I
city
do remember
contribution
back in the
is.
day, as you brought up since the fair first started, back in the day when Ollie Peterson and a bunch of the other older gentlemen that were all in charge of the fair commission and everything, they never had to pay for the police and the fire. That was all part of the city. And I do remember that it started coming up in the last umpteen years that the fair had to start paying for the police and fire on that.
I did hear that, yes.
Okay.
I'm not sure when it started, but it had to have started prior to 2014.
Oh, yes.
So, yeah, I mean, maybe at that time, the contribution from the city should have increased, knowing that the fair was gonna have to pay for personnel services, but, I think that that was one of our points that we were gonna make today, was trying to, and maybe the mayor can speak on it, trying to limit the personnel services that, the celebrations need to, limit some of those personnel costs. So yes, that would most primarily, as you can see in 2024, $52,000 was spent just on personnel alone for the fair.
So, but we do cover the speakers and the normal gist of garbage and that sort of stuff for the fair, for the permits and everything, okay.
Madam Chair.
Yes, John.
So, well, I'd like just to speak on a couple things related to this, what I believe would make the most sense for some high viewing as far as cutting costs, okay? And just a little bit of a history lesson. The Fair Commission was my first board of commission I was ever appointed to, and I believe it was 18 years ago. And I think it was 07. So, the thing is, back then, and I would probably confer with two of you, either David or Rosie, that the costs shifted. There was, you paid for police and fire and DPW, but you didn't pay the entire loaded freight. And that, please don't interrupt. And that was, I'm teasing, Madam Clerk. God bless you. I can say God, right? Yeah, we can. So, the thing is, those costs shifted, and I know, Rosie, you and I have talked about that ad nauseum back in the day when you had the big, long, green, foldable spreadsheets and everything, and we would sit there and we'd wonder, why did that shift? We don't know how it shifted or why it shifted, but it did. So, we have to also look at a little bit of a history lesson as to what are the needs to ensure a safe community event. Police, fire, DPW, we have to make sure we provide those, but I believe, and I'm gonna ask for a staff reduction plan from each department head, police, fire, DPW, regarding how they can maintain the level of service that we need to have, yet lower the costs. And there's things that we need to look at, like, do we need to have the trailer there? Okay? Do we need to have that set up? Do we need to have, every time somebody, and Kelly's heard me say this like it's a prepared speech, every time somebody steps foot on the fair footprint, they're on overtime. That is absolute absurdity. It makes no sense. That is a patrol zone, period, for the PD. Now, back when I was a commissioner and I chaired the commission, I asked the police department to provide an after-action report. And I think for 3 years we got that. It was a breakdown of calls for service, types of calls, any arrests, any citations. Same thing from the fire department. What kind of calls did you have? How many bee stings? Whatever you had, how many were transported? And what we noticed, it was very, very little action and activity, so to speak. Now, is it because it is morphed into a safer, family-friendly event? Is it because attendance is down? Whatever it may be, I believe the easy, low-hanging fruit, and I'm going to suggest these things. The first one would be, as far as the police goes, you know, why do we have officers posting at these cement barricaded, blocked off areas? You know, why does that have to be that? You don't need to do that. You put down cement barricades, they're there. And if the officers, if I was to do it, I would have 2 teams of 2, and they split the fair in the middle and they go out back and forth. They keep walking. That's what they do. That's what they do. And then that they can also check on barricades. So, because that's right there, I believe that's 3 officers, all on overtime, from the entirety of the fair, open to close. So there's somehow that's gotta be dealt with. That's one part of it. The staffing part of it is why do we have, when you look at calls for service and things, that you can still have a first aid tent. First aid tent can be there, and that's where any lost children would go, at the first aid tent. Doesn't need to be the trailer with its own dispatcher and all this stuff going on there. Back in our youth, those that have been here a long time and attended this fair back when, I remember going to it starting in the 70s when we moved here in 74, going to this fair, and it was packed. And it's changed, the dynamic has changed, because you're also looking at people that no longer want to rent their space in front of their yards, so you have gaps. You look at a number of other issues that we don't have. We shut down beverage service outside, we shut down music outside earlier. We took that whole element where the fights were and all other stuff like that, and it's gone now. So, but the staffing still is there, and that's a big deal. So I believe there's room to cut there. Same thing with bringing the fire department in, having a first aid tent, having it, we still need it's nice to have the speaker system when there are lost kids, but how many lost kids are we dealing with? And what are we, 2, 3? I don't know. Our goal is to provide a family-friendly event, but at what cost? And I believe we're getting hammered on every year over cost, and it's not cost neutral. The goal is to be cost neutral. I understand that. But to get to that cost neutral, we need to have the cuts. The most expensive cuts are the overtime. And why is it just overtime? And so there's some things there that can be, and I want to allow, and I want to ask, and I want to get the feedback from the department heads, the chiefs, the DPW superintendent. You tell me where you can do your job more efficient. I don't need to jump in and tell you. I'm just going to give you suggestions of what I would do, but you tell me how you can, there's no, and I understand there's no guarantees in life about, you could have some nut job drunk go through a barricade. You're going to have that regardless. But, hopefully we've never had it, and the use of those cement barricades are very, very effective. And you put them down, and that's where they sit, and that's blocked off, and at nighttime it gets opened up, or however we want to do this, but that's how I believe it would be run more efficient. When John Trudeau was the active owner-operator at Swiss Street, there was always that question about parking in the back lot, and where would that barricade be placed so that people can still come in, and all your employees and everything, and put them down, walk away, but there's cement, so they're not going anywhere, and it still provides a level of safety to the community. So I don't want to ramble, but my plan is in the very short future, probably by the end of the week, I will be making contact with those department heads to come up with a staff reduction plan that can do what I was speaking about. I digress.
Oh, we covered pretty much everything on that part. I mean, the other thing is the employee benefits. That was never part of anything prior.
No, the reason it was so low way back then, we were all volunteers.
Well, yeah, we volunteered.
We didn't get nothing. I mean,
My-
firemen, I'm talking firemen.
Well, you too, and my family did all the garbage pickup, so that wasn't anything that
We
did
never got
everything.
paid. I mean, we didn't get nothing when
No.
the fair first started.
No.
We just went out there. did
Kept
our-
all the barrels at the house, and all the toilets were there too, so.
But I mean, I don't want to cut it down because I was one of the firemen that
Right.
was getting benefits when I got full-time. We went full-time in
Right, but in the,
71.
is-
Then I think that's when they started paying. I don't know for sure, but
But that's the thing, Dave, to your point, when the firefighters are stationed there, what are they doing? So that's the after action has to dictate
Well-
how many medical calls do you have? Do you have any transports? What were the challenges? What were the,
well, yeah, I know. I remember making those things out for the city when, what we did.
And that went by the wayside. But
Yeah,
we need to know
it's
because we
gone.
need to be data driven. So where's the data to justify
Personally, I don't think you
huge-
should get rid of that trailer.
Well, I'm just throwing it out there, what does it cost to bring it up there? I mean, there's certain costs associated with it. Do we need it? So I'm just gonna let them figure out what they
That
think.
way, yeah.
And the last thing that I wanted to mention is obviously there's not a whole lot of costs that are associated with this fair. I mean, if you look at the financial report that's in your packet, I mean, essentially it's very minimal supplies except for the sanitation. And you can see sanitation has gone up over $6,000 in the last 10 years.
Mhm.
So, you know, thinking if maybe there's other quotes that we can get, or.
This is one of the best,
And
this is one of the best
I'm
quotes
aware,
we've
that's why
had.
I'm saying.
I
I-
just felt
Shirley works very hard at that.
Well, I know that's what we have this year. We already have our contract in place this
Yeah,
year, correct?
We had a company that did them for years and years and years, and he always gave us a good price, and he came in, you know, each day and, you know, emptied them and all that stuff. Then he notified us that he's slowing down, he's trying to get out of it, so he only has minimal. So I spend an entire day calling all these places, and this is the only place I found that would come and empty them.
And that's understandable.
And they
That's
do
the
a
big thing.
great job when the toilets were leaking and water was leaking. They did a great job on fixing
Yeah,
and,
I've heard absolutely no complaints about this company,
Well, I mean,
yeah.
having them
It
on
was
two
within
separate
budget. I'm
properties,
just
they do
saying.
fantastic.
The biggest
Ways
thing is
to-
you have to find a company that can give us that amount and that will come and empty them. That's the biggest thing. I
Huge
found
thing.
another one that would do it, but they won't come and empty them.
They want us to padlock them.
Labor Day
No.
weekend,
Yeah.
so,
So, well, just a thought.
yeah.
I know that I had spoken with Chief Learman as well, and some of the things that we had discussed was the location and the setup and how it's so dense, and that presents a challenge for him and his team, in my understanding. And so, you know, you have to have those officers where they are located. I don't know what, I'm assuming that they walk, but I guess maybe they stand in a
Walking
certain
golf
area.
carts.
Yeah, okay, so,
At the end of the entrance, so I think there's a police officer in the car.
yeah, I think you're right.
I
Mm-hmm.
remember
But they're
walking by.
stationary when they're at those barricades.
They're,
That's where they're stationed.
over at Romy's, there's a officer in the, yeah, at both ends, there was an officer in the vehicles,
Right.
at both ends of the pair.
And there's also one by me, and I think there's also one down at the,
By Jesse.
I just,
Yep.
Yeah.
So there's four
Yeah,
that are
that
posted
Oh.
there.
Yeah.
I only know about the two in the end, that's as far as I got.
Right.
I know that he felt that they are efficient and, are doing what they can, but I'm certain that there's at least room somewhere in terms of the pay, whether it's double or overtime or whatever that is. I think that certainly there's areas to explore. I will not presume to know how the fair functions, because I don't. But I know that I was trying to brainstorm ideas, and some of the things that I thought about was like maybe a tiered vendor pricing, late registration penalties. I don't know if you, okay. Expanded booth frontage fees. Okay.
Great
Featured-
ideas.
I know, right? They're so great. They were already
Right.
incorporated.
Uh-huh.
You know, like feature vendor packages, something like that, to offer like optional promotional upgrades or something like that. Sponsorships and partnerships, so like maybe local businesses, corporations.
Do that already.
Sponsoring, okay. Friends of the Fair program, premium parking passes, which I don't think that you guys have really much over
Well,
that,
we give
right?
the people that are affected by the fair, they each get 2 free parking
Okay.
passes. Now, some of the places don't allow them to use them, we tell them that they should allow them, but other than that, like the church and that, they do their own parking and charge for their own parking.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we do that with the Lions. We give them their tickets,
Yep.
you know.
Because you guys honor them.
Yes.
Yeah, we honor them.
And I'm not sure if on the other end by Country Vale, the Historical Society honors
Yeah,
them.
I don't know
They
what
might,
they
but,
do.
but to Kelly's point, you know, that's, and again, you've got so many different moving parts to this that we don't have the umbrella of here's the rules, because there's different entities that are there that are running their own show.
Right, which was what makes it the unique experience that it is.
Right.
It's not in a park where you
Right.
can lock down on everything, so.
Right. I can just finish this. branded merchandise, I don't know if you guys have anything that's specific to the fair itself, maybe something, you know, like that. Enforced permit compliance, which sounds like you do, out-of-state vendor surcharge, tourism community granting programs. I don't know if they exist, but from a cultural standpoint, I feel like if there is anything that's about culture or community, I think that this would be one of those things that would be appropriate to look into. But that's kind of just my brainstorming today about this, and thought I'd just throw it out there and appreciate all of you humoring me, especially with all of the things that you've already incorporated.
Well, thank you. Anything else? Okay.
I know that, sorry, I was just thinking, so when we talked about this at council, Alderman Pecorelli had suggested that we start treating all of our programs with like one vendor, kind of try to start creating a relationship and a contract that can cover various programs and not just your program or Civic Celebration, to try to look for ways where we can get discounts, and then also that more than one time of being a customer. I think maybe that might be a possibility. I'm not exactly sure.
I'm not exactly sure what you're talking about, so can you explain
Like
a little bit more?
Like the porta potties, you know, whatever services that you provide that are costing you, that would also lend itself to other events like the Civic Celebration. I'm trying to think of what else.
Yeah, they use the same restroom company because they had the same problem when
Okay.
I went out. And I had mentioned that to, what's her name? She goes, Becky, yeah. She said, well, it's not like the events are going on at the same time. They're two completely different times, so.
Is Becky at the porta potty company?
Yeah.
Or whatever? Okay. All right.
We get our dumpsters from somebody else?
Dumpsters we get from, Kevin takes care of that. We don't do anything with that. I don't know if he gets, I'm assuming he gets them from John's, but I'm not sure.
Because John's, if he doesn't, we need to, because they oftentimes
Yeah.
donate dumpsters as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay, because if not, I know a few now.
I don't do anything with the dumpsters.
Okay.
Only the porta potties. And like shirts, like Civic Celebration does shirts, but we don't do that for
Yeah,
civics
that's kind of
there.
something I was thinking, like the, you know, branded merchandise, catchy slogan or something, and
We will have to look into
that
that.
you could like,
We know a person.
yeah, right, and then you can take whatever doesn't, if you don't put the year on, then you can just take it to the next year, and, you know, if something wasn't sold or what have you.
If I could.
Go ahead.
I agree with Kelly on that too, and I thought Civic Celebrations, those can koozies that they had last year, I thought went over pretty big. And everyone wanted them, you know, whether you're drinking a can of soda or a can of beer. You know, and it's kind of cool and fun to collect them throughout the years. I didn't know what year we're on for St. Martin's Fair, but we could,
1958.
you know, I think that'd be, you know, something that somebody would buy, put the year on them maybe, because something that some people may buy every year, in t-shirts. I
Right.
mean,
And
you
that's
know.
what I'm thinking, is like something on a t-shirt that really kind of impresses upon people the history of the fair. You know, and I don't know, I'm sure there's ideas that can be incorporated.
Sweatshirts
That's an
that-
interest, but
Yeah, sweatshirts maybe even too if it starts. I mean, normally it's heavenly hot, but if it's not and Katrina's cold, then people can buy a sweatshirt. Baseball hats, you know.
Well, then you also have to look at who's going to sell them, where are they gonna sell them, who's gonna take care of the money, who's gonna take care of this, who's gonna blah, 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 blah. So I think we really focus on staff costs, because that's where we really are gonna have a savings. And bring in more cement barricades and plop them down and make sure they're in a good area, and we leave them alone. Because Civic Celebrations, I don't believe when those things go down that they're actually staffed with a squad. On the end right behind City Hall here, there's the main one, because I know you have the Serpentine to get in, to get here to park, and I just think that that's a huge savings spot right there.
And the porta potty people can get through those okay, obviously.
Well, they have different ways that they get into, well, I don't know about Civic Celebration, but for St. Martin's Fair,
Yeah.
we have a map that we give them, and they know how to get into the spots that they have to get into.
In the police trailer, isn't that where money goes? Or is that only for a short time?
That
Maggie.
Maggie took it home last, or Maggie took it to the office.
Home?
Yeah, home. This is her home.
You got that new car.
There wasn't that much.
Yeah,
Oh,
she put it in the Dropbox.
Yeah.
got it.
So I was thinking like maybe the trailer is more for things like somebody's overheating, they need to, you know, lay down or something like that, or some sort of medical
Out there.
concern.
Trailers, isn't there a
There's
fire?
a fire, the fire
Yeah.
one,
And a police,
And the police, there's two of them.
yeah.
and their own dispatcher there. And there's a lot of overhead there for that.
But I think we gotta keep at least the dispatcher there, because we had 2 episodes at the Lions, and I called 911, because I, believe it or not, couldn't find a cop. And I mean, there was a fight and everything, and so I called 911 and never did get them. And they got, so what I did, I guess they got their own, they got a private line up there. They gave me their number, that if something happened at the, like the Lions, our Lions Head, you know.
Well, that's something that they should probably give everybody that's
Yeah.
involved in the fair, that number.
I think I brought that up
Yeah.
last year when we couldn't get through, or something at our fair.
Yeah, that's a huge concern.
It is, I mean, it's,
Because cell phone service.
it wasn't only my phone, the other guy members, a couple other members dialed 911 and couldn't get through.
That's a preparedness thing.
So, you know, with the trailer, it's a lot of communications, if somebody goes down, and it's hell to get through there.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
I mean, we've been lucky, we had one fire there, and I was working, it was down by Rosie, I think, the tank started on fire, that was back in.
God, that was
That's
back
in-
back in the
90s
80s.
or late 80s or
Late
something.
80s, early 90s.
And we had a hell of a time getting through, I mean, people just wouldn't move.
Yeah.
We had the
That was the
siren and
explosion.
everything. They almost had to run them over.
Really?
Right.
You know.
My dad.
But they only got one truck, you know, that's why they keep that little grass fire rigger in it. And there's only 150 gallons of water in there, so if one of those buildings in St. Martin ever start,
Right. Yeah, well,
God
it's,
forbid, I mean.
it's, like I said, it's a very dense area. I've been there a couple of times,
Yeah.
and I don't know how anybody lives there during that time, just because.
It's actually very easy.
Get in and out.
You know how to get in and out.
Yeah.
But, John, does the sheriff's charges? They never did, they did, because
They're only
we're
post-
Milwaukee County. Yeah, I know, they were, well, years ago, they walked the fair.
Right, I used to, yeah, when I worked there, I was on a motorcycle
They
unit,
used
I
to
would walk it too,
But they
and
didn't charge, they don't charge.
Nope.
They never did.
it's a mutual aid. The only place there is at one intersection on St. Martin's and Forest Home, and that's it. It used to be a much bigger presence there.
Yeah.
And it was, so that's where they're,
I don't think the sheriffs are there anymore.
No,
they were there last year.
Were they?
Directing traffic on
Yep.
I don't get
St.
double
Martin's.
so.
They were,
It was 2.
yep,
That was it. I mean, it used to be more than that, and then we would go eat at your grandma's.
correct. But
And then we would do all
they
that.
were
It
there,
was-
they left, they just swapped as they went through. There was never more than 2 there at a time.
Because we're in Milwaukee County, you know, we're
Mm-hmm.
allowed to have the sheriffs. That's what they told us years ago.
Well, and those are county roads at
And
one
county
time. It was
roads, too,
MM
yeah.
and double O.
Yeah.
Where St. Martin's used to be the county, used to be a county road, and then it was annexed over to the city.
Right, it was County Highway MM, and then the county took care of it, but then they rebuilt it, and then gave it to the city of Franklin.
Yeah.
Have we considered increasing the permit fees, or have we done that recently?
We did that.
A couple years ago, the permit fee is pretty equivalent to most of other places that people go. So-
2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, about 3 years ago.
And explain, because I've been talking too much, but, you know, okay, let's say you want to get a permit, there's no guarantee you're going to get a spot. 'Cause
Correct.
You got to pay separately to the landowner.
That's, again, is the uniqueness with the fair. When you would go to a place that it's in enclosed, like, let's go with McWanago. They have a spot, it's all in the fairgrounds, it's all one spot, one permit, blah, blah, blah. This, you get a permit from the city of Franklin, but you also have to get a spot from the landowner.
You
So,
have to typically pay them whatever their price is.
whatever their price is, and some of them are not cheap.
Right?
Up
They
in the
don't want
center
it.
of town, they try to price them out. And they pay it.
Pay it.
a lot of the food vendors will pay high premiums to be in the center of town on that. And down at the other ends is where you get all the people that sell the t-shirts, the sunglasses, everything else. The
Got it.
By the
produce,
church.
yeah. So they can't afford to pay $25 a foot. Who can?
No, I understand that, so I just, again, just thought,
When they come in by us, we always say, do you have a spot? And we explain to them, you need to get a spot first before you get a food permit.
Does the church participate in that, just out of curiosity?
Which church are we
That's-
talking about?
is
There's
it
two different ones
Southbrook?
there. Yes,
There?
Southbrook has
They've got
places in there. They even tried to do a couple of years ago, did the bubble or the water bouncy house or whatever.
Bouncy.
That really didn't do a lot of anything, that a lot of people just left their kids there.
Oh, that's,
And thought it was a daycare.
oh, wow.
Yeah, they just park cars. They were across from our lot,
Okay.
our Lions lot.
Yeah, you're by the, old hardware store, right?
Yep, field that was given to us by Mrs. Herda, the Lions Club.
So yeah, there's different aspects there and there, so. But yeah, I agree with the mayor about the wages being way higher than what I think they should be, so.
Review that and certainly, oh, now I forgot what I was gonna say. There was something else I was thinking that we can look into, potentially, we might just need to increase the budget based upon inflation and
which we
everything over
have,
the
but I
years.
think, yeah, majority of it is personnel costs, and what were we saying? I mean, the St. Martin's Fair and the Civic Celebrations are pretty much the same amount of personnel costs,
Mhm.
and they probably shouldn't be based on the type of event it is, how many days it is.
Yeah, we only have 2 days. So if we're the same as what 4th of July is, that's a little scary.
Can go 3
That
days.
we're getting
We're heavy.
as much cost as they are for more days.
Are they there the night before and then they're there the night during cleanup, like police and fire, are they still there?
They're there bell to bell. And now when the fair ends, they do vacate. They're not posting, if that's your question.
No, yeah, I'm saying the night before to set up, cause everybody's stuff is there and people have vendors.
No.
They're not posting
No.
for that.
No.
That's a normal patrol
Okay.
zone.
Starts in the morning.
Okay,
Yeah,
I was just
it's
curious. I
The
didn't know
vendor's
when they-
responsibility to make sure that they have their stuff.
Security.
Fair enough.
All right, anything else on the discussion of the budget or anything on that? All right, move on to, we kind of did some of the revenues and expenditures of the budget. The rules, and then would we cover the permits in that? I mean, I didn't see too much in difference in the changes except for the dates that you are having for the Friday before the fair.
And
Is
then
that the
that's,
week before?
I think it's 22nd. After the 22nd at 4 PM is the late fee is charged.
Okay.
2 weeks prior to the fair, it has to be cash for out of state.
Is $10 normally the bounce check fee? I thought it was like 20 something.
$10 is the vendor background check.
Oh, $10 is the background check,
That
okay.
always was
$10.
sucked into the fee, but now we're gonna charge that. in
On top of it?
additional.
Okay,
So it's a $10 fee for a background.
background check.
And we changed the time, remember? at the
Yep.
last
Yep.
meeting? Instead of 6 AM, you guys wanted to do 7.
That's gonna help with things.
Monday.
But I didn't know if you guys had any of the changes you wanted to make on them.
For the 25 budget, I don't think that when I was putting the budget together, I knew that the background check was gonna be separate, so there's essentially no expenditure line there. So I can just make a note of that and then make sure that if that's what we're doing going forward, then for 26, I will have its own line.
Because otherwise we were doing them especially for, homegrown. They don't pay anything. I didn't print mine out. I didn't print mine.
Yeah, it's
16
pretty
years.
dangerous.
Somewhere. I'm
That's
sorry.
what we did across.
You're reading them.
Yeah, they don't pay for it.
So the 7 a.m. start now, hasn't been voted on or hasn't been,
It was voted on at their last meeting.
okay, good. So that's, so the 7 a.m. start is gonna be, this will be the first year that's gonna be 7 a.m. I
Correct.
think that's, makes a lot of sense and it's gonna help things.
Yes, Sunday it's 8 to 9 and Monday it's 7 to 6. And then the $100 late fee. Because there's a whole bunch of stuff that we have to prepare and get ready for you guys
Mm-hmm.
that Friday before.
Is there a way, I was thinking, about mobile selling? I know it's included in number 3, but last year we had the lady, or the year before, that was in the baby cart or whatever, trying to sell the dogs mobily. Is there a way of,
Twice and told her she couldn't.
twice, I walked,
Homeowner's permit that they had advice,
she had dogs in there, I think they were
Right.
for $1,000 a pop.
yeah,
And-
I ordered 2 and I gave her the money, I still haven't gotten them.
Yeah, probably lucky.
And I walked her all the way to Romy's the second time. And is there a way of putting that in the bold italic about mobile selling with the dog? I mean, in line with that?
Mobile selling.
Yes, by its
Sure,
own.
you want it all bolded?
Yeah, that would be-
Paragraph bolded, or-
Because then once they're in violation of that, then it's a police issue.
Correct.
And now it's,
Right.
selling without a permit, trespassing, whatever they want to cite, then they cite, because that's
Right.
ridiculous.
I mean, I was,
Rule 12 has the sale or offering of dogs is prohibited.
right, no, I'm aware of
But
that,
you're
but
saying like the
the mobile
mobile-
part
Mobile,
Yeah.
like,
is,
There's no mobile selling, because sometimes people will have popcorn, and they'll go up and down, the bag popcorn down, well, there's no, it has to
Yep,
be.
bottles of
right,
water for
or
a
bottles of water or
Correct.
stuff like that.
So how far do you want that, you want the whole thing bolded, or do you just want the first sentence bolded?
Uh, It just,
Tell me what you
it's
want.
not popping out as much, I mean, the no mobile, but the no mobile, moving, traveling, I mean, could we possibly put, I mean, I don't know how many lines we're gonna have on
We
the,
can bold it all, but you tell me, you want the entire paragraph bolded, or just the first
the
sentence?
no mobile sellings, traveling, or advertising, that part.
Okay, so from no.
No to,
Allowed?
yeah. Next time when I pull it out of my back pocket, it'll be a lot easier to find. Angie, you have a question regarding the home baked. Is that still with that pickle rule or whatever that they can
That's
sell?
why I think we added the verbiage of, except those exempted by the state of Wisconsin.
Right, so is that the pickle rule?
Yeah, there's a pickle bill, and then there's the whole.
What
there's
number
the,
are you looking at?
The 18.
18. There's the home bakers, that's a court ordered, that you can make shelf-stable baked goods in your home and sell them to the public at an event like this or out of your home. That is exempted by the state of Wisconsin from licensing. Otherwise, I don't want people making sloppy joes at home and selling them here. That's
Right.
kind of what that's trying to prohibit.
Okay, so I had a lady that called me during tax season that asked about selling cakes and cookies at the fair. I sent her to you,
Yep.
so.
Yep, as long as they're non-potentially hazardous, so no cheesecakes, no cream fillings. If
Okay,
they're
so that is
shelf-stable,
something
not
that's-
refrigerated, the state of Wisconsin currently allows that, yeah.
Okay.
The court can change that, but right now the court or ruling is that they allow that.
Okay.
in their home.
Don't they go back and forth on that?
They do.
Yeah.
They do. And certain things were allowed, like freeze-dried candy because it's heat-treated or cold,
Cotton
now it's
candy.
just baked goods. Cotton candy is still in the gray area, but yeah, no, that's processing, so they have to have a license for that, currently. But yeah, currently it's anyone who makes shelf-stable baked goods. There's a definition of baking that they use.
There are people that do baked goods in their home to provide for the fair at like the amount of people that come through.
Yeah.
I can only imagine how long in advance
For
they
sure.
bake.
For sure.
I hope their kitchens are clean.
Well,
It's a
yes,
risky
that's
thing.
the debate we have all the time, the regulators versus the home bakers, so. Have a cat climbing on their counter, so be it.
I don't know. I just saw that's gone back and forth.
Yes, it has over the years. So that's why we just left it as, except those exempted by the state. Covers whatever's currently a little.
I'm sorry, I'm just like, but you get that with like any baked
Yeah, it's
goods,
such a-
like fundraising, and, you know, that's the
Church
risk.
bake, Yep, it's a huge thing right now, all the sourdough on it here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a huge thing, porch pickup, order online, that's a huge trend right now, and that's allowed, so.
Good stuff. Is there a,
Restrooms at the bars and the restaurants have to be open.
Ooh, let's touch on that for a second.
Yeah.
So,
good?
So now let's start with Romy's, okay? So if they supply their own portals on their own dime, do they still have to have it open inside the bar?
Yes, I went over that with the state last year to make sure that we had the right interpretation, and Kev says, yes, if they're serving food, they have to have their restaurant.
If they're serving food outside, not inside?
I will double check.
Because that's Nate's question, because if they've got their kitchen closed on the inside, they're cooking everything on the outside, serving everything outside,
So they're not serving any food inside the building.
that's what he'll have to,
Yeah, I'll have to, I can talk to Nate about it.
right?
I did get the interpretation last year, and they said they had to be open, but we'll talk again in detail.
Because his part with now Ricky's is the inside is closed, but the outside serves all the food, does everything, and that way they can have it closed. And then I believe Swiss Street had an issue where they didn't have them open, but they also were only serving food outside.
Outside.
You know, that was it.
And it may be that it's required because there are people in the building, and that might be a building code also, I'm
Okay.
not sure. If
We're just looking for some clarification on that because,
I can then also talk to Justin and see if that is something that would then fall under, if you're operating as a commercial building, do you have to have a restroom available?
okay.
Wait. Are you done?
I yield.
Go ahead.
Okay. Wasn't there an establishment that we visited that they just put like the order sign on their bathroom, but then people are coming and going, like their regulars in their bar, and of course their employees. The bathrooms weren't out of order, but they put the out of order signs on the
Yeah.
restrooms to avoid the public using them, which I thought was not nice. Let's leave it at that.
But I believe that establishment also paid for their own portals. But, yeah, I know what you're saying, so we'll get some clarification on it.
Oh, yeah.
Anything
It's the
else?
council.
Anything else on rules and regulations? Anybody else have any? All right, next one is the operations for the 2025 St. Martin's Labor Day Fair. Are we going to have another meeting before the fair and pick out who are checking for permits and everything now or then? Or anybody have any ideas of what they want to do?
I'll volunteer then.
I'll volunteer again.
I'll volunteer.
Okay, I don't have a pen.
Dave, make it
Do you,
18.
but your question was.
Do we want, do we need another meeting
on
beforehand?
May? If I were you, I'd have another one end of July.
End
just
of
to see
July?
where things are at,
Yep.
but that's your call. Yeah, and you've gotta have an
Right.
update about
The
stuff
updates.
anyway.
Okay,
So you want to pick July?
in July?
Oh, that's up to you.
It's not tax season, so it doesn't matter to me.
Maybe the last Wednesday in July?
And
That's the day before
That would be
state
the
fair.
30th.
That won't work for me. I'll be at the fair. State fair.
Well,
But it doesn't matter.
23rd?
How about the 23rd then?
That would be better for me, but yeah, state fair starts on the 31st and I have a 30-foot space there. I'll be prepping.
Understood.
What are you selling there?
I do custom shirts.
Oh, nice.
Apparel.
Okay, so that was the.
That was the giggle. That was the giggle, yes.
That's awesome.
So you're thinking 5:30 on July 23rd?
5:30, July 23rd.
Perfect.
Anybody want to say that?
Oh, sure. whatever to
Lori makes the motion
Make
for
motion,
5:30 on
23rd.
July 23rd.
5:30.
I second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we have a time. All right, are we ready to adjourn? Call the
We're
meeting.
gonna talk about volunteers.
Oh,
then.
volunteers, we can figure that out next time. Yeah, next meeting. All right, call the fair over and done at 6:15.